Hey there, everybody. SmallCapSteve here, coming live at you. It's Friday, January the 8th. It's a beautiful day here. I'm coming at you from Ajax, Ontario, the suburbs of Toronto. Lots of stuff going. You can tell these U.S. cannabis stocks are they're rocking and they're ready to keep rocking. We are in the early stages of a bubble that I think is going to be bigger than anything we saw in Canada. Subversive had Michael Auerbach on the show earlier in the week. Stock's just been rocking ever since. We've got Supreme Cannabis. They announced some international shipments. Columbia Care, $130 million bought deal. I'm going to answer some emails. I want to look into the stock ACDC live on the air. Take a look at this micro cap that's rocking. Reached out to my buddy TJ. Said, hey, TJ, can you get the CEO on live TV? Let's see. I'm calling this TV. Stock, I think, it's done about $70 million of volume. Regardless, we're going to chat about it. I'm going to answer some emails live on the air. All right, let's hit it, baby. Jason, sweet Jason.
How goes it this morning? A bit of a slow morning. Not my favorite morning.
I'm wearing my Believe hat. Believe. The company was a nightmare. I went to their office once. This is a fun story. I go to their office. It's one of those cannabis companies that, you know, they were like the biggest failure of the early stage guys because there was no reason that they weren't successful. They just
couldn't put it together
every possible turn. I remember going to their office in I think it's like Burlington or Oakville, and they had like 10,000 square feet, beautiful office in a commercial building, and there's probably like 2 people working there. And
I think it was Hamilton actually.
No, that's where the facility is, but the actual corporate headquarters I'm talking about, the actual
okay.
where the because look, all these cannabis companies, they didn't really know. They all wanted to have these big offices. They all thought that they were going to be like Canopy and do a ton of them and have all these like analysts and payables, receivables people routing around, drinking coffee, talking by the water cooler, and none of that really happened. So they just like had this beautiful, gorgeous corporate office, and nobody actually seemed to.
Massive echo chamber.
The funny thing that's not the only company that I've seen that happen. One story I'm going to get into one day is actually the time I went to T-God's office. It'll shock you to hear that T-God basically was the same fucking thing. Like I went there once with Bruiser actually. At the time they were like $1 billion plus market capitalization company, and we go inside and it's like. First off, they had all these private offices. Nobody was in the private offices. Everybody was in the cubicles. And there was like 4 people who worked there, and they were all IR.
They all had to be close by to make it look like people were around for the walkthrough.
Yeah, I never got T-God. I never understood it. Well, it's pretty easy to understand. Some people who are very vocal online got into those early rounds. And sometimes when a stock does well and people make a lot of money, they tend to believe in all the little nuances or the little bullshit that management tends to put out. But I mean, like in order for T-God to have $1 billion valuation, you got to think of it this way. Where's my path to $100 million in EBITDA, right? Like now look, we are in a weird time because of these negative, real interest rates. Nobody knows how to value anything and everybody's chasing yield. But my general rule is, can this company get to their current valuation of 10 times EBITDA just to sort of sustain itself at this valuation? So when I mean T-God's trading at like, $1.5 billion, you're telling me that they've got a path to, $100 to $150 million in EBITDA. I never saw it. They were late to the game. They had this idea that, organic was going to be this big thing. And it just, to me, it never passed the basic smell test. Whereas when I looked at all these U.S. operators, and we're starting to see now, this is why this bubble is going to be a lot bigger in the U.S. because you got these limited license states. full vertical integration in a lot of these states where, you're going full seed to sale. You're going to have the grow facility. You're going to process the products. You're going to deliver them to the store, and you're getting that highest point, which is that last point of sale. And you're going to see some pretty big numbers there. So I think that we're in the very, very early stages of the next bubble. And I actually look at all these cannabis companies. Some of them I don't like the valuations, like Jushi, for example. I think Jushi looks expensive here, but who am I to say that? This company could easily crush a cash flow or EBITDA number that will make today's valuation look cheap. So there is real opportunity here. And it's not like in Canada where it was, we got lots of square footage. We're going to sell a lot of cannabis to Germany. Germany, baby. It was stupid. Nobody was ever buying that. And now as we're kind of looking at all these cannabis companies, their only path to actually get people excited about their stock is saying, we're on the NYSE, we're on the NASDAQ. We've got that first path to going out and making some noise in the U.S. because we could raise that capital on a U.S. senior exchange. So that is the opportunity right now. And we heard it from Michael Auerbach. He's a director at Tilray. He came on and said that. So anyways, ranting, the whole point of this whole thing was belief. Office, way too big, not enough people, was a pretty good indication that thing wasn't going to work out. But you know what? I love this hat. What do you think of this hat there, Jason?
Steve loves rubbing it in because with me being located remotely, I get none of the swag, yet I complain about it all the time, which is fine. But
I can't tell the story on air, but I got blackout drunk with some of the executives. I didn't know them that well.
There's a reason some of us are operators while the others of us sit on the phone all day.
But those are some pretty nice headphones you got there. Where'd you get those? Baby Gap?
These are my daughter's headphones because Steve was complaining about some feedback he was getting. So I haven't had the chance to actually run to town yet. So I confiscated them from my daughter so that I can look nice and pretty for all of our viewers.
How old is your daughter?
4.
So you're using your 4-year-old's headphones.
Yep, is either that or take my 5-year-old, but he was using them. So
I love it. Okay, so let's get into it. First on the news here, you covered this morning. Subversive Capital. They have expanded their financing to $63 million. What can you tell me about this story here, Jay?
Yeah, so I mean, this release this morning from Subversive was that while it was revolving around the raise, most of it was actually focused on who their investors were. So initially, they set out to raise $36.5 million US, and they've increased it by nearly 70% to $63 million. Chief among that is celebrities such as Rihanna, Meek Mill, Yo Gotti, DJ Khaled. I could have said any of those wrong. I'm not a celebrity type person, and I only know about 2 of them. But based on their partnership with Rock Nation, they've got a lot of big names taking a stake in this company directly, which is great to see. It shows long-term commitment, some possible collaborations down the road. It could be interesting. Right?
Jay-Z's going to be involved. He's not. This isn't like what we saw with some of the Canadian names where they announced, that they were going to have some sort of partnership, like Gene Simmons, with the
biggest anti-drug advocate running a Potco.
I was at a CSE event downtown Toronto where Gene Simmons got on stage, and all these 56-year-old white males, they come storming in, right? The room's packed. Gene Simmons gets up on stage and he's just like, before I got into cannabis, I looked at all these people and I thought they were losers. And then I found out I could make money on it. Now I love cannabis. How do you want that guy to be representing your company in this space in these early days is beyond me. I think that that those were the early examples we saw, that those little signs that we knew would make this whole Canadian cannabis bubble end badly. And I don't think that Jay-Z is going to attach his name to a brand and just walk away. This is something he's passionate about. He's passionate about, sort of those minority interests and all the bullshit that's happened with both black and brown people. He spoke openly about that yesterday during his few minutes there, where he went, why he liked this deal. Said Michael Auerbach was very, very, very progressive in terms of trying to help move the dial in terms of working with minorities and offering programs to help them, have a platform so that they can go out and run their own cannabis companies. Because it's hard, right? Like to run a cannabis company, you need access to capital. And then you get on the phone with all these like rich, white dudes, and they're using terms, and a lot of them are like VCs, and they're going to throw all these different terms and structures at you that kind of screw you up. At first they try to be really friendly and nice to you, and then the next thing you know, and like sometimes I know people who operate these things, and they send the term sheets over to me, and I'm just like, yeah, they're basically trying to create some fancy structure to just take over your company, and they probably told you that they're just like going to make a small investment. Yes, small investment for them cash wise. Large stake of your company that they're going to take. So it's really challenging to navigate that capital raising environment if you don't come from that background and you're not from that world. And if you've ever been to any meetings on Bay Street or Howe Street, it's largely an old white guys club, and that makes it it makes it challenging if you don't have people in your world that are part of that world to go out and raise capital. So I think it's really great that they're going to try to create this platform for minorities to actually go in, because like, look, I mean, these are the people who are largely screwed up by the war on drugs, and then we're just going to have white people come in and just take all the capital and money that can be generated in this business. It's fucking bullshit, is what it is. So I think it's great, and I hope that more companies they continue to go down that path. And it's not just lip service, it's not just a slide on an investor deck, but it's actual programs that help young entrepreneurs that don't have the ability to just go and raise capital, get involved, build businesses, and create opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, a large component of Jay-Z coming on board is the commitments that the company has agreed to make in relation to helping minorities that have been basically put aside with the whole cannabis run, despite the history that exists in America, right? So, I mean, he's come on as a chief visionary officer, so he's taking a management role, so he's very involved, right? And that's a massive name. I think once we move to federal legalization south of the border, and this company is effectively able to go on to the NYC, NASDAQ, whichever so chooses, I think it's going to be just an amazing, incredible run as people try to get behind something Jay-Z does. I mean, he's a very successful person, not just in terms of music. Absolutely, that may be what started him off, but I mean, he's got a very strong track record of building businesses and brand. Building businesses, building brands, and I think that actually gets lost on a lot of people because the first thing they think of is music. And I mean, his music is not my taste, but what I find interesting about him is his business success, right?
I'm not a guy who really knows. I'm not a huge rap guy either, but I love Jay-Z. I'm a nerd. I'm probably gonna sit around and listen to nerdy independent music on my record player after a long day. But when I hear Jay-Z, I get pumped up, I get jacked up, and I think it's great. If you look at what all these MSOs are trying to do, right? What they're all after is shelf space. They want their brands, manufactured infused products with brands. That's where you're going to get the most defensible margins. And Jay-Z's the guy who's probably most likely to bring you that, especially if he's heavily involved. So I think that's why this is significant, and it's not just Jay-Z; it's all the people he brings with him. He's backed his horse, and this was I dropped that tidbit during my time with Auerbach. I said, look, MedMen, they used to whisper that in my ear. After I'd get on the phone with them and ask them questions about their share structure, which I think, quite frankly, in some cases, I did more homework than they did on it, or at least they were doing that banker thing where they didn't want to actually talk about it. They'd be like, hey, look, we think we're going to get Jay-Z. It's coming any day now. We're going to have that announcement. It's going to be significant. You're just going to see the stock rep. And, thank God Jay-Z never did it, because I think Adam Bierman, from everything anybody who's ever met him, I've never met Adam, but it didn't sound like the right guy or the right fit for them. And I think that Jay-Z is, it's going to be really interesting to see. And look at what Meek Mills tweeted earlier. I love waking up to make money off stocks.
And this was after the announcement that he had just invested in SVC. So I think there's a direct correlation right there.
This is why the U.S. pot stock bubble is going to be so much bigger than what we saw in Canada. It's going to be huge, because people aren't interested in talking mining. Then everybody wants to talk about rock. What angle did you put the drill into the ground? Was it a step out? Nobody wants to talk about that. But how good is your pot? How strong are your brands? Everybody loves to talk about these things. I know for you, Jay, you have a field day going through the financial statements where there's a whole bunch of M&A. There's different cash components with different cash flow components with different expenses. The company's trying to hide things. And a lot of that happens in mining. But the difference is that you actually have operating businesses you get to analyze, as opposed to what's effectively a piece of real estate in a publicly traded vehicle. So there's so much drama too, right? A lot of these CEOs, most of them in Canada were just blowhards. You're going to get a lot of really interesting characters emerge on FinTwit over the next couple of years. And I hope that we're at the forefront of covering it, because I think it's going to be just a blast.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot more that can be done and said on an operating business, right? There's a lot of external factors that impact them. And I mean, FinTwit is such a major component of that. For example, the riots last year in California, we were able to cover MedMen getting broken into basically as it happened. And that's just something you don't get in mining, right? But that's where the drama comes from, and the interest, and there's just all sorts of different components. And I mean, it's going to be a different landscape overnight. The moment that federal legalization happens, you're going to see all kinds of asset divestitures. It's like Michael said, who wants to have a growth facility in Massachusetts? You're going to want to grow somewhere like California, where it's ideal for farming cannabis, rather than some dark northern state that you can only grow half the year, and it's a pain, right? So there's going to be a lot of movement. And I mean, the winners right now may not be the winners in 5 years once legalization happens, because of that. They've sunk all kinds of capital into these facilities. They've got lease back arrangements that they can't get out of, and no one's going to want to buy those properties off them for the amount of money they have into them, because suddenly there's going to be no use. We see that in Canadian cannabis right now. There's all kinds of facilities for sale. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on them, and they can't sell them for $10 million now, just because the demand isn't there, right? So the winners right now may not be the winners in 5-10 years.
Yeah, getting back to what I was kind of getting at is, when we look at all these U.S. operators, right? It's how many flags can I plant in how many states, how many dispensaries can I get, and that's the story I'm going to tell. What if descheduling or legalization works in such a way that cannabis can cross state borders? It's going to really shake up a lot of these issuers or companies or stocks or whatever you want to call it. It's going to make it so that having those characters or or influencers or brands or whoever's involved or associated with your company it's going to play a really, really, really big role. And as far as I'm concerned, and I used to have this conversation with some buddies when MedBen would whisper the Jay-Z stuff into my ear, and I'd be like, is Jay-Z the biggest name you can get to back a cannabis company? And I mean, that's a whole different, a whole debate to have on its own, and probably depends a little bit on your perspective and what you enjoy. But I think he probably is. I'm trying to get TJ, if you're listening, I want to bring the ACDC guys on later. Would be really interesting with all the volume they're doing today. They're not a client or anything at the moment anyways. They do stuff similar to Iguana, battery company doing $70 million in volume. Would love to have him on and talk about him, or not him, his deal today. Okay, so let's move on here. Next, Supreme Cannabis. Did they have a deal with which rapper did they have a deal with?
It was KKE, which is I can't think of his name right now. Wiz Khalifa, that's who. They've since terminated that arrangement, if I'm not mistaken, and they just took a bath on all the sunk costs they had in it. But yeah, so Supreme, I was a bit snarky with this morning. They announced that they're doing international. Sorry?
You snarky never.
No, never. So yeah, I mean, they put out a news release this morning, and I don't even know why they bothered, because it had no details whatsoever. It provided no semblance of what they're actually doing. They announced that they're now shipping medical cannabis to Australia. Do we know how much? Could be 5 grams for all I know. They had no details on it at all, aside from they were in 10-gram containers. Great. So can we expect major revenue? Is this a one-time thing? What's going on here? On top of that, they announced the 4th shipment of product under its partnership with Breath of Life International, which is in Israel. Again, they said it's the largest shipment to date. They said they're shipping Gene Guy and Sensi Star strains, but there's no color on the size of it. So to me, this information is entirely useless without further details.
The last time I looked at Supreme, and I gotta be honest, it was probably like a year ago. That convertible debt scared the crap out of me and made me go, how does anybody buy shares of this thing? It's a busted cap structure that needs to be sorted out.
I believe they settled some of the debentures off memory, so it's not as big of an issue. But yeah, oddly enough, we were talking about Believe earlier. At the onset of public cannabis companies, it was Supreme and Believe. You either put your horse behind one or the other in terms of future expected mid-tier producers, and they've both kind of disappointed from an investment standpoint, at least. I mean, Supreme this year, wholesale and international revenue is 4.4 million. Last year was 6.2. So they're announcing these great international deals, but yet international revenue or the segment itself is declining.
Everybody, look, I'm not a cannabis consumer. I every now and then, but it's just not, doesn't really jive well with me. I seem to just get fucking conked out every time I do it. But everybody I know who seems to know quite a bit about, cannabis products, they actually really have positive things to say about Supreme's. So Supreme as a grower is pretty well respected, as I understand it.
Yeah, keep in mind there's always 2 parts to a company that's listed: the public vehicle and actual operations.
Yeah, 100%.
This thing is a pig in terms of its share structure, right? Investors from 5 years ago, you buy and held, you went up and you came back down, and it's actually at a lower price per share than it was before they had their license, right? So,
yeah.
Is there an investor return? If you look at the market capitalization, sure, but the bank account won't say it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Columbia Care, they're to raise 130 million via bought deal financing. Something also pretty interesting that came from the conversation with Auerbach was he actually said that he thinks that Columbia Care is going to be one of the first ones to list in the U.S. Once that process starts. So we'll get into this news in a second, but it sounds like the idea here is that that's the big reasoning behind why some companies get on the NEO is they think that that's a quicker path to NASDAQ/NYSE, which makes some sense.
Yeah, I mean, prior to my conversation with Michael, I had never really viewed the NEO as being a top tier, but if it's an easier method for companies to get onto the big boards in the US, then it makes complete sense for someone like Columbia Care to list there. I mean, Columbia Care does have the dual listing on the CSE and the NEO, which is a little silly to me, but if you're chasing volume for the equity, I guess that's just what you have to do. So late last night, they announced $130 million bought deal financing. And it's shares only. I don't know a whole lot about the company, but if you're able to offer financing with no warrant attached, they're doing something right. Financing was at $8.05 per share. There's a 15% over allotment option on it, and it's expected to close next week. So,
yeah. So
again, I don't know a whole lot about them.
Here's a little info we got from I think our buddy Young Justin sent it to us this morning. I'm assuming that this is from Cantor Fitzgerald. The cash position of all the cannabis companies, net cash. So this is backing out the debt. It looks like there's going to be a whole bunch of capital that's going to need to be raised in the U.S. cannabis space, and boy, is it ever needed right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now's the time to go, especially if legalization's coming down the pipe or expected to. So this data, I believe, is as of December 23rd. Curaleaf Holdings is going to have an entirely different position once they close that $275 million financing. But still, I mean, all these companies need cash desperately. It's just the nature of the beast right now.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Steve receives an email. Let me see if I can just pull this up here. I don't want to get this up on. Okay. Hey, Steve. I love when you ask people about how they got their first job in finance. I graduated in the spring of 2019 with a BCom and dragged my feet for 1 year after school, casually looking for a job. Then COVID hit. Now it seems like no one is hiring. I feel the longer I am idle, the harder it will be for me to go and get my first job. Give me some advice. Okay. So John, here's my advice to you. There's never been a better time for young people that want to work in finance to go get involved. But here's the challenge. You have to be able to pick up the phone. Seriously, one of my biggest advantages in life is the fact that I'm willing to pick up the phone, right? You'd be surprised how willing people are to help you if you just call them and talk to them and tell them about yourself and tell them about your situation. Now that's point A. Now you're probably saying, okay, how do I call people? Who do I call? Well, look, we have, over 1,000 junior companies in Canada, and all of them desperately need help. Now, that doesn't mean that you can call any one of them, they're going to hire you. But there's a lot of them that are good companies where you could get your foot in the door by just calling them, talking to them, getting to know the story, developing a relationship, regardless of if that turns into a labor or a job or anything. That's besides the point. 1, you build your network. Okay. 2, you learn. And 3, there could be an opportunity down the road at some point because these things are constantly evolving, right? So I get it. What you've been told probably by your parents when you were in high school and you took these sort of guidance classes was, well, you go to school, then you start applying for jobs on the standard, Workopolis, LinkedIn, Monster. I don't even know what they are because I've never really looked for a job. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, but I know guys who hustle, and the key ingredient is that they all pick up the phone. One of my biggest advantages in life is the fact that I'm willing to pick up the phone. Seriously, if you pick up the phone and just start developing relationships and chatting with a lot of these companies, you would be surprised the opportunity that is out there and how willing people are to help. A lot of people just like to connect people. So don't be afraid to start learning. And heck, it doesn't even have to be a company. Start out chatting with your peers. Twitter has changed the game so much for people who want to get involved. You could just DM a lot of these execs, right? Like, it's crazy to me, some of the emails and DMs I get from people that I would have never had that opportunity in 1995. Right. And look, I was in that position when I got out of school too. I didn't know where to start. Right. I started looking at a lot of the jobs that were available. I could go be an investment advisor assistant. And, shortly after I finished school, the .com bubble had ended. There wasn't a lot of opportunity out there for young people. So it was like, okay, historically, my path would have been by going, getting a job with Canaccord, Hampton, Mackey, one of those kind of companies, learning, building my experience, and then going out and maybe becoming a broker, a deal guy, etc. But that's not how the game works anymore. The only way you're going to get a job as a young person at one of those places that's actually a meaningful job is through nepotism. If you don't have that going for you, don't worry. There's so much opportunity, and don't be afraid by the fact that you don't know anything. Don't be afraid. Quite frankly, and Jay will attest to this, most of the executives in the industry, fucking idiots. You can call them up and chat with them. And if you're willing to learn, ask questions, and you got a hunger for this, man, in 2020, 2021, is there ever an opportunity to hustle and go find your own path? That exists. But again, it starts with picking up the phone and calling people. Regardless of if it's somebody you meet on Twitter, if it's an exec you find, calling an IR guy, just get out there, start building your network, start learning. And the biggest mistake I think a lot of us make is we focus too much on education. It's not to say that, I'm not saying don't go to university, don't, start the CFA program, any of that sort of stuff, right? All that stuff's pretty helpful. It's going to make you a lot smarter when you get on the phone and you start talking to these people and they bring up like a term like terminal value or Black-Scholes or the discount rate. Yeah, you want to know that stuff because it's going to help you. You're going to sound a lot smarter, and they're going to go, this person's pretty smart. I want to get to know more about them. I can use this person, right? So there is value in education there, but in the end, it doesn't matter, right? Like that's the old saying in PR. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It matters who knows how smart you are. And all that happens by picking up the phone and building your network. So, John, my advice to you is don't get disgruntled, keep learning, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone. You like a company, at the bottom of that email, there's usually a phone number. Call them, ask them some questions. Become friends with that IR person on the other line. They might find you annoying. They probably are because, they're paid a monthly rate and they just want to get through these phone calls as quickly as possible. But every now and then you're going to run into somebody who's just as passionate as you are about these things, and you can develop a friendship. And there you go. There's one person on your Rolodex. Next thing you know, after 6 months, you got a Rolodex of 100 people, and all these people and companies are looking for help. There's over 1,000 names. There's a ton of opportunity in there, but it all starts with being willing to pick up the phone. So that's my advice for you, John. What's your take on that there, Jay?
I cannot agree more. I'm from small town Saskatchewan. I don't like talking on the phone. I'm not a people person by any stretch of the imagination. I live in a town of 500 people, and it's too big for me. But at the end of the day, I got to where I am because I picked up the phone. Maybe one day we'll tell a backstory to how Steve and myself came together. But at the end of the day, it comes down to networking. And, I hate the word networking. I have a business degree, and largely all they teach you is network. And for someone like
they give you no actionable advice though. Just network. How do I do that?
That's exactly what it is. And I mean, I'm an introvert through and through. At my core, I would rather be on the couch by myself doing nothing, just reading stuff online and getting my own stuff done, right? However, I was fortunate enough prior to being a part of our team today, to have a boss that basically forced me out of that shell to push me forward and just break into the whole, you have to talk to people, you have to get on the phone, you have to do the small talk. I hate small talk. I still have to do it. Steve can attest to how quiet I am typically on conference calls because that's not my scene, right? But networking is so crucial that it cannot be understated. And when I say networking, I mean, go on Twitter, message that guy that you seem to find yourself in a lot of conversations with, build a relationship, and grow it from there. That's how Steve and myself effectively came together. And the importance of that cannot be understated. We got to where we are because we picked up the phone, we talked to people, we interacted. Reading filings is great. That's one of my passions and one of my favorite pastimes to do. But it's meaningless if I'm not talking to people at the same time. They can provide insights, they can help you along.
This reminds me of a story. I once went to the Ianthus MPX merger meeting with Bruiser, and I kid you not, we were the only people there just wearing regular like street clothes. Everybody else there was a fucking like banker at like GMP or Canaccord, Hadley Ford wearing his former Goldman Sachs guy wearing his suit. We show up, me and Bruiser, just wearing regular, casual clothes. And people wanted to talk to us and they wanted to know our story. Like who are these weirdos? How come they're not wearing a nice suit? And I'll tell you, Bruiser's probably one of the most well-connected people I know. You know what Bruiser does that no other young people seem to want to do? He picks up the phone.
And this is where I'll give Bruiser full credit. He is excellent at networking, and that's how he has gotten to where he is. I mean, it's no secret we're friends with him. He's a great guy, and you need to talk to him on the phone to fully understand him from a lot of different positions. And I mean, that's okay, but pick up that phone. Don't be afraid to talk to people, converse, and build a network. And it's funner it's a lot more fun to learn in a group with a group of people than by yourself. That's just reality.
And small cap is a dangerous place, man. Like my early years in this was mostly like huddling around with other retail investors and us chatting about all the scams, right? Like,
that's how we came together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's how you build those relationships. And those people are like, career wise, I've gone on to, do a lot more stuff than a lot of them do. But like any of them ever call me or reach out to me, I pick up the phone because I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the fact that there was a time where, we'd sit around and we'd talk about what a scam artist Sheldon Inwintosh was. Or Anthony Durkatz, and like to me that those experiences and that just ability to have people to kind of figure out what was happening, and now that like I get to see behind the curtains a lot more, I kind of understand why deals are structured the way that they are, because ultimately deal makers have to get paid, or otherwise there wouldn't be any deals. But that was like really those experiences of just chatting with strangers on the internet. A lot of us turned into really, really great friendships that will probably last a lifetime. And I've been chatting with just people who reached out to me on Twitter regularly. So again, to be clear, I'm not saying that everything's a scam, and that's a whole nother conversation to have, right? At the time, we were calling them scams. But again, deal makers, they got to get paid. And it's not that they're necessarily scams. It's just from our perspective anyways, we kind of looked at it and we were like, okay, these are like why are they issued all these cheap shares? And we all get, pissed off and try to research it, figure out all the names involved. At the time, we were like, okay, it really pissed us off, but it got us chatting. It got us going through filings. It got us learning. And just that whole side of it, I'm pretty grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, that's largely how we came together. Whether or not they were, we called things how we felt at the time. And I mean, that's fine because in the sense that it allowed us to build those relationships that are so crucial to how we operate today. Networking is the reason we're able to do what we do today. That's really just the core of it. It's a term I hate. It's something I hate to do, but at the end of the day, it's just the world we live in, right? We're so fortunate to live in the time that we do, in the sense that it's so easy to connect with people. You can reach out to absolutely anyone. Grow that LinkedIn network. Steve hates LinkedIn to the nth degree, but I finally convinced him to update it. And I mean, it's an important aspect of what we do. It's just constantly be in front of people and conversing and learning and understanding, right? And I mean, sometimes they bring you issuers that you would have never heard of before, and they're a great deal. I didn't know about New Locks until 6 months ago, and at first it seemed too good to be true. But you know what we did? We reached out to the management and said, hey, can you explain this to us, because it seems too good to be true. Now I talk with Ryan quite frequently, and it's great. And got there because of networking, picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about the stock ACDC. It's rocking with volume. I don't think that anybody's going to hop on. And I've reached out to my buddy TJ, seeing if somebody would come on and talk about it. Hopefully we can get them on at some point, because I don't know if this is just like a lot of people washing shares or if this is real volume. I think that it's always a reasonable. When I say washing shares, I mean, that's often something that happens where people are just exchanging shares back and forth as part of market making activities or just to generate some volume. But 90 million shares traded. That is a
we're at 90 million now. That's a lot of.
Yeah. It's up 55%. So, I mean, there's some real buying going. And I think, I don't know enough about the share structure to really actually comment on it. But
it looks a bit loaded at 313, but CEO's not always right either. For all I know, that's vastly incorrect. It's seen a ton of volume. It looks like it was at 5 cents a few days ago, and now it's trading at 25.5. Great return for whoever was in ahead of time, that's for sure. But personally, I don't know enough about the space or this company in particular to really provide commentary on it. So I'm going to lean on you for that, Steve.
Well, I know the space incredibly well. Let me see if I can pull up the website here. Now, I say I know it incredibly well because obviously Guana is one of my babies. It looks like they have energy storage solutions, strategic partners. I saw something about they had like a power wall on one of these. There's no deck on the website either. So like, it's actually kind of hard to learn about this deal. They have something here. I hate when companies don't have decks up, because it's like, I'm not saying that I really make my investment decisions on investor decks, but it's a really quick way to get a snapshot of what the company does so I can decide if I want to invest. And I think that it's interesting. I'd love to have somebody come on here and chat with us and show us a little bit more about the deal, because it's seems like do they have real merit? Who's making their power controls? Who are their partners? What does their distribution look like? What does their supply chain look like? What's their balance sheet going to look like? because I know like it's taken Iguana 20 years to get to the point where they are today. And then I look at ACDC and I just see this new sort of deal. It's generating a ton of volume. There's not a whole lot of information out there on it. So I genuinely want to learn more about this. I love this space, and hopefully we can get somebody on at some point to come talk about it. So this James Garner guy is telling us that PBX is up a nickel, 36 cents on 610,000 shares traded. That's not that much volume there, James. It is a good amount. 610,000 shares is not nothing, but I'm starting to think that you actually might be one of those Twitter pumpers that keeps bringing up this name constantly. We're tremendously long, PBX, so keep doing what you're doing. But let's hope that this thing can keep rocking. Jason on Twitter said, "I think someone that is a known smoker like Wiz Khalifa would be a bigger brand name."
Put it this way. I knew who. Yeah, I'm not qualified, but I knew who Jay-Z was when I had no idea who Wiz Khalifa was. To me, Jay-Z is more of a household brand. Household name, not necessarily a household brand. The problem that Supreme ran into as far as the Wiz Khalifa brand went is Canada is extremely restrictive when it comes to branding for cannabis companies. You see the same issue with Snoop Dogg and Canopy Growth. Snoop Dogg, to me, would be a great partnership in a different country.
I think Snoop Dogg's a corporate nightmare. Just his track record of everything he's been involved in. I personally,
that's a very valid point. Now, keep in mind that most people today don't know the past that exists there. And I mean, that goes for a lot of operators within that space. I'm not looking to get sued, so I'll keep my comments to myself. But that's certainly true. My understanding is Wiz Khalifa actually has a very clean background. And he as well supports his community, much like Jay-Z does. But again, to me, Snoop Dogg is a much bigger household name than Wiz Khalifa. Jay-Z is probably, I'd say, bigger among the crowd that's probably going to purchase cannabis. I don't know. Again, neither you nor me are experts in that field. I know a lot about cannabis companies, not so much about celebrities.
Yeah. Well, look, let's wrap it up here. Any parting shots for the weekend? What's going on at the dive today?
Oh, what's going on at the dive today? Off the top of my head, I can't even remember what article came out just before we convened here. Shortly, we've got Sean Dollinger on the Daily Dive with our host Cassandra. Plant X, which he founded, is having a great day. Last I checked, let's see what it's at here quickly. Up 23%, volume of 1.4 million. So yeah, he's having a great day. Also scheduling our weekend content because while I work all weekend effectively, I don't like to be writing. I got other stuff to do for work. So tomorrow we've got a part 1 of 2 coming out from our famed writer, Braden Mackey, on Bitcoin. Part 2 will be out Sunday morning. This weekend we also have some stuff out on being a troll. That's what he does best. We've also got some great macro coming out from our macro writer, Hermina Paul, and we've got some stuff on Canadian banks coming out from Justin in terms of what the analysts are expecting for 2021 for that sector.
Mm-hmm. Disclaimers.
Disclaimers?
I wanted to go on a rant about Braden's tweet. I think Braden. I know he rubs a lot of people the wrong way on Twitter because he's kind of rough around the edges. Tweet.
Again, Braden is someone you gotta pick up the phone and talk to because he is hilarious, and you actually have to understand his level of sarcasm in so many different things.
I mean, yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, they stormed the Capitol, busted the windows, occupied the chamber, but now they're gone. They just left. Are they supposed to stay till or aren't they supposed to stay till their demands are met or declare themselves the government or something? Did they just get bored? Effectively saying you guys have ran the worst revolution ever and you guys are a bunch of pussies. Yeah, that's what I love.
And with that, we are entertainment purposes only. We've certainly provided some entertainment, especially with that closing parting shot from one of our most excellent writers. I hold no designations or licenses related to investing. Entertainment only. Thanks for your time again today, guys.
You guys could have spent the last 51 minutes staring at any screen, any place in the world, doing anything else. But you guys chose to spend it with us. I appreciate that. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend and spend some time with the family, maybe a little bit of time researching some U.S. cannabis stocks, because I think we've got a really fun ride ahead of us. All right, everybody, have a great weekend.